A confirmation for the audio, please, guys. If you're able to hear me out perfectly well, kindly confirm the same. Thank you. So, hello, a very warm good morning to all of you, and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to the last session of geography. Here, we shall be finalizing the portions of economic geography, and then we shall be taking a look into the portions of mapping. So, that is what this session is going to be. And we are going to carry on till around 10:15 a.m. And that is going to be the stretch of the session. So in this, we shall be looking at and brushing up on the portions of economic geography, where we shall be taking a look at the settlements, the portions of transportation, and then we shall be moving and delving into the portion of the area of mapping modules. Okay, so overall, yeah, I hope that you still remember what we have covered in the entirety of the syllabus of geography for the last 24 modules. And basically, this will be a continuation of that. So, in the last module, we had discussed about the aspect of the discussion was about the population and the various different aspects of population. How is it that the population exhibits a kind of an increase or decrease, the population growth, migration, the factors determining them, all those we had taken a deeper look into. Now we come to the portion of human settlements. So when we talk about human settlements, Oxbow Lakes, Vijay, yes, we have done way back in module 5 itself. Take a look at the annotations or the recorded lectures, you'll find that. So now we come to the portion of human settlements. So human settlements, basically, as and when agriculture came into existence, we had an understanding or we had a scenario where people started settling down. Because earlier humans would lead a kind of a nomadic lifestyle where they would be moving from one region to another continuously, and that would have been a continuous process. But ever since you had a situation where agriculture came in and the supply of food was in a way sedentary and permanent, people started settling down. Now, based upon how you settle down or how this settlement would happen, that is how you had the division of the various different types of settlement. So you had the compact or nucleated settlement and also dispersed settlements, right? So when we talk about compact or nucleated settlements, basically these are the kinds of settlements, as the name suggests, where the settlement is in the form of large concentration, right? Large number of people, basically, they settle down in the same region. Now, in this situation, why is it that people settle down in the same region? Because the geography allows so. The geographical realities allows this to happen. So that happens when you have a large number of people sharing a region across the plains. So this is generally observed across the region of plains. Across the plains. Okay? And here, generally you will find that people end up sharing the same resources with most of the habitants around that region. So the resources in terms of availability of water, availability of fertile land, that is something shared by the general population. So in this, resources are shared. Resources are shared. Okay? Now, here, in this kind of a situation, you will find that the population density will always end up being higher. Generally, you will find that people indicate a kind of a same occupational pattern, a same kind of employment facility. That is something, and they will be sharing the river water, they will be sharing the drinking water, and mostly you will find that the occupational works or the fertile lands, etc., they lie in the vicinity. So across the region of the northern plains, the coastal region, etc., wherever you have the fertile plains in existence, you will come across this compact or nucleated settlement. Then you have the dispersed settlement. generally observed across the plateaus and the hilly areas. Across the plateaus and hills. Now, in this situation, across the plateaus and the hills, the geography or the topography doesn't allow the people to end up settling in large numbers. As you can see here, it doesn't allow the people to settle down in large numbers. So that is why it is something which is dispersed. It is something which is dispersed. So that is where generally each of them will have their own access to resource. Each one of them, in many of the cases, they would be carrying out a primary activity. A primary activity would be carried out in some region or the other. Okay, so generally observed across difficult topography and difficult terrain. Okay, and this is a kind of a settlement whereby you will find that agricultural activities, if it is carried out, it is carried out on a smaller scale. In certain cases, even across the hill regions, you will have the plantations which are carried out. So this is where you have people living very far off. You have another kind of settlement, that is what is referred to as hamleted settlement. Hamleted settlement. And this is what exhibits the distribution of population in the form of various different small hamlets which are in existence. The various different small hamlets which are there. So hamlets are what? Hamlets are basically the small distribution which are spread away from each other. So in this, you will have few houses which are there. Maybe they will share a common well, a common water resource, etc. But there will be some amount of distance in between them. These are what are also referred to as hamlets. So this is the broader classification of the various different types of settlement. All these types of settlement you find to be present in India as well, in distinct numbers, in distinct quantities. Now, here, settlement overall, based on the source of occupation and the source of economic activity which is pursued, overall the broader classification happens in the form of rural settlement and the urban settlement. So here when we talk about rural settlement, in that case, primary activities such as agriculture, animal husbandry, fishing, etc., they are basically carried out. So in rural settlements, here, why is a settlement or when can a settlement be referred to as rural is when majority of the economic opportunities are in the form of primary activities. So primary activities dominate. And also here, population density and population density is very low. Okay, so that is basically the conditionality that you will find. Generally in rural areas, you will not find it to be densely populated. Okay, the population density is low. The absolute number of people living in an area, that is also significantly lower. Now here, there are certain factors which end up impacting, which end up influencing the location of rural settlements. Where is it that you will find these settlements to be in existence? So for example, availability of water supply. Now this water supply is very important in order to supply or in order to get water for your irrigation, for agriculture or agricultural activities. Then in the form of, even when we talk about, let's say, domestic utility, okay, so availability of water is a must. Any rural settlement that you will find it is based close to a source of water. and that has been the genesis of civilization as well, as we have discussed already, as we have talked about it already. So this is basically the important requirement. Then other than that, you also have the importance of land. For example, the land requires to be fertile, and also availability in order to build the various different houses. So availability of land for construction of houses as well. Availability for construction of houses. Okay, so that is basically another factor which is relevant and which is important in this case, that you need to have availability of land for construction of houses, because if the land is not available, where will the people settle down? So that is why land requirement, and land should be fertile as well, or if not fertile, at least productive, in the sense of when we talk about even forest resources and utility of forest products. So there also it is the land which is producing enough. So fertile and productive. Okay. And then you have the uplands. Uplands are what? Which have a small amount of elevation, a small amount of height factor associated with it. Now this elevation is generally preferred. This is an upland. So here you will find lot of houses to be distributed, to be present in this particular area. Now, here, why is it that people settle down in these uplands? What is the purpose? Beautiful. So that is basically in order to be safe during the conditions of floods, to be safe during floods, and also it provides for a better defense. Okay. Better defense against whom? Against the enemy countries like China and Pakistan. No. Against the neighboring clans, against the rival communities, against the wild animals. So that is why when you have a presence of houses across an upland, that always provides you with a kind of a utility in terms of defense. That is why historically, if you take a look at it, most of the earlier settlements that you will come across, or the capital cities of the earlier kingdoms which were in existence, most of them were situated or placed across an upland, majority of them. For example, in the case, let's suppose, if you consider the northern plain area, right? So for a long period of time, if you take a look into the history there, during the ancient times, Patliputra was the center of all the political discourse, because it was very well guarded, and defense was important because it was surrounded by rivers. Now then, after that, during the 5th and the 6th century AD, you will find that the center of politics and the center of power shifted from Patliputra to Kannauj. And if you look at the topography of Kannauj, where later on Harshvardhan and etc., basically they had a rule there. So if you look at the topography of that, it was chosen because it was on an upland. So being present on an upland makes a region very suitable, very ideal to be chosen as a kind of a settlement. Okay, so this is basically the requirement, one of the primary criteria when selecting a rural settlement. And when we talk about urban settlement, it is referred to as urban because here you will find and associate with the nearby urban regions. You'll find that majority of the people, they are involved in secondary or tertiary activities. Almost more than 70 to 75% of the population that is involved in either secondary, tertiary activities, and the proportion of primary activities is very significantly lesser in comparison. So here you'll find Economic activity. Yes, Pranay, that is correct. Citadels. During the case of Harappan civilization, particularly example of Dholavira, can be cited as the upland. Now, economic activities which are carried out basically in this one dominated by secondary and tertiary activities. That is, in this situation, you will not come across many people who will carry out agriculture, or not many people who will be dependent on the forest produce for getting their income. Majority of them will be involved in the production process or some other service sector. That is one of the criteria. Also, the number of people living, that is population, will be high. Population is higher. And when the population is higher, you also come across a scenario where population density is high. Population density is higher. Okay. So that is again another characteristic where the population density is very high in the urban areas. That has got its own set of associated issues and associated problems. But what should be the population density? So that qualification and that distinction is different in different regions. For example, in United States, if you have around 2,500 people or more living in an area, that is basically something referred to as an urban settlement. In India, you have more than 5,000 people. And in the case of Japan, if more than 30,000 people are living in an area, then it is called as an urban settlement. And along with that, you also require a density criteria. If the population density is more than 400 people per square kilometer, and there is a significant share of non-agricultural workers, then in India, you have a region classified as a urban settlement. Okay. Now, when we talk about the various different urban settlements in existence, you will find that it is distributed across the country in various different aspects. It is distributed in the sense majority of them are clustered across larger economic areas and larger economic zones in a way. Right, majority of the settlements, they are concentrated around the urban areas. You'll also end up finding that across the various different census data which has been collected, the urban settlements have shown a marked increase. And as and when the 2021 census figures will be released, it is expected that the number of urban areas would easily cross the figure of 10,000. So that is a characteristic generally associated with the case of urban settlement. Okay. Now, as I told you, this urban settlement has got its own set of associated problems, particularly observed in the case of developing nations. Now, because there is significant amount of people coming into those urban areas, significant amount of people migrating into the urban areas in order to find relevant kind of jobs and relevant economic opportunities, you'll always come across shortage of housing. Housing becomes unaffordable, right? In the middle or the center of the city, which is also referred to as the central business district region, where all the major businesses, all the major production activities, many of them are carried out. So in that area, you will find that the housing is unaffordable, due to which the poorer people or the set of migrants, they settle down in the outskirts across the river plains, the river floodplains, etc. And that is when you will come across a humongous growth of slums. And these slums, they grow in clusters. So, clustered growth. Clustered growth of slums. Mostly, the slums you will find to be present across the river plains. Why is it? Do you think that the slums, they are settled, or you will find them across the river plains? Why not somewhere else? in almost all the city of the country that you go to, from Delhi to Mumbai to Hyderabad to Chennai to Kolkata, majority of the slums are settled down across the river sides. Very good. Availability of water is one of those very important factor. And near the rivers, you have a kind of a fertile plain. So that allows, or a plain region. So that allows a lot of people to settle down, right? And that provides its own kind of community structure, an own kind of social support structure is established. So people, they want to live in a certain kind of a group where they have a kind of a support structure. So in that case, it is across the river plains that it offers a kind of a compact hamleted or a very significant nucleated settlement to be in existence. So mostly across river plains. Mostly across river plains. Okay. Now, other than this, here, when you have the growth of slums, in this case, you'll find that proper hygiene is not maintained because you don't have proper sanitation standards, you don't have the sanitation facilities. So that brings about its own set of onset of diseases, pollution, and pollution of the river system as well. So in this case, oftentimes you will come across a situation where you have onset of diseases, onset of diseases, okay, then pollution of rivers. So these are few of the problems that you come across in this situation. People will dump the garbage in that region, so the drains, etc., will be choked, will be blocked, and these are the areas which get flooded every time when there is excess rainfall. Whenever there is excess or an undistributed amount of rainfall which happens, these are the regions which get immediately, they will get flooded. Then you have economic problems. What sort of economic problems? So in urban areas, because so many people are migrating, in a way, you have an oversupply of labor force. So you have oversupply of labor. Oversupply of labor. So what does that mean? That has got an implication in the sense that you will get lower pay for the same amount of work because there are other people to do the same job. So as a result of that, the pay level, the income level becomes low. Income level is lower. And when the income level is lower, that has a cascading socio-economic impact which is observed as well. What is that socio-economic impact which is observed? In that situation, the educational facilities for the young ones. So the people will not be able to avail a quality education facilities. The health facilities, when required, people will not have the access to quality health as well. So that means no access to proper education and health. And when you don't have access to education and health, that means the next generation also is unable or is not well equipped to find relevant jobs. They are not well equipped to face the outside economic harshness which persists. And that is when, at many of the areas, this is also one of the epicenters which gives rise to various different the law issues and the law problems. Any of your friends, when if they are in the police services, they will tell you that it is very, very difficult to manage and keep a hold of the crime which is committed in these areas. So there will also be an associated law and order issue. So law and order issue. Okay. So in majority of the cities, you will see whichever city that you are coming from, in whichever city you are coming from, north to south, east to west, any urban area that you have seen, you will find that in these areas where you have a cluster of houses and there is no permanent source of income, there is no access or availability of quality education, not that any kind of education. So in the name of education, we all know that multiple things they run on in the name of education, but quality education is significantly missing. What do we say as quality education? Something which makes you self-sufficient to face the outside world, be it economic scenario, be it morality. So making you self-sufficient. So that is where the quality is lacking, due to which people resort to various different crimes as well. Okay. Now, then in economic problem, how is it oversupply? Oversupply in the sense that for the same job, you have multiple people who are ready to do the same work. So when you have multiple, let's say you are hiring people, you have opened a company and you are hiring people for, let's say you have a manufacturing plant, and in that you want people to be hired to take care of, let's say, bolt manufacturing. Now, bolt manufacturing, you have to take a look at the machines, right? Maybe you require some level of skill, but not that high level of skill. And if you are offering, let's say, 12,000, now you find 30,000 people or 10,000 people ready to apply for that job. You also need profit. So you find that if I lower that pay to 7,000, then what happens? Then the number of applicants reduced to 5,000, but still I need only 4 people. Even if I reduce this to 6,000, 5,000, you will have people ready to work for you. So that is why that happens when there is oversupply of labor, right? Because many people, they migrate in. Okay. And then you have the associated environmental problems as well. Which kind of environmental problems are associated? So you have basically the aspect of pollution, all different types of pollution, land pollution in general, air pollution, water pollution, noise pollution. This is a common issue. Other than that, in order to expand the aerial spread of these urban areas, most of the urban areas in our country, they face the same problem. Sudden explosion of people coming in, so they have to haphazardly increase their aerial spread. So that means destruction of natural resources like forest land, like the river plains, etc. So destruction of large or forest resources, natural resources in general. Okay, like forest land, river plains, etc. All these can be taken as the problem. Then other than that, here in this situation of most of the urban areas, because there is significant amount of encroachment which is carried on in order to adjust so many people, you'll find that oftentimes the natural flow of the river, the presence of natural lakes, wetlands, etc., all of that is interrupted. So because of huge amount of encroachment is high, encroachment level is high, due to which you will come across a scenario where you will find that the natural flow of the river, the natural presence of lakes, etc., that is disturbed. And as a result of that, it leads to frequent issues such as urban flooding. Urban flooding is a common phenomena. Common phenomena. Okay, the urban flooding in general, you will find, is a common phenomena in this case. In majority of the urban areas, be it Mumbai, be it Chennai, be it Bangalore, be it Hyderabad, these are a commonality now. It is not a rare occurrence that Hyderabad is flooded. It is not a rare occurrence that Chennai gets flooded during the month of November or December. It is not at all a rare occurrence that Bangalore gets flooded whenever you have excess rainfall. So that is because of very high level of encroachments, due to which the natural ecosystem that is oftentimes disturbed. Okay, now these are your problems, and from here generally you will find that questions have been framed, questions have been asked in the examination, in the mains examination, and they have been repeated in a sense that the similar type of questions have been reframed. What are the problems that major cities like Mumbai, Chennai, etc. face? Why is it that they face frequent floodings? What are the problems of the urban settlements faced in developing nations? All these are the common phenomena that you end up experiencing, or these kind of questions, they are repeated by civil services. So there, always don't restrict yourself to the book, don't restrict yourself to the slide as well. Restrict or basically expand your horizon by increasing the scope of understanding of your own urban area, whichever area that you are living in. Expand the scope of that. Okay, now what can be the solution? Solution can be planned growth. So when you build a city, for example, in our country, since the time of independence, we have, or post independence, we have had hardly the development of 3 to 4 newer cities. Other than that, we have the existing cities which have been tackling the excess amount of burden of population. For example, I will tell you one of the very precarious situations as an example, and you will also know that. Now, at the time of the Mauryan Empire, the peak of the Mauryan Empire, the capital was Patliputra, the present day Patna. Now, imagine at that point of time, more than 2000 years ago, almost around 2500 years ago, Patliputra, what was described as the aerial spread or the area spread of Patliputra, surprisingly, even today, it is more or less same. It has expanded ever so slightly on the vicinity, but that has been haphazard. So imagine a city which has remained almost similar in terms of its extent, in terms of its spread, for more than 2000, 2200 years. So that is why it needs, or obviously it will face issues. So you need a planned expansion. So when you and you need newer cities to be developed, newer economic centers to be developed. But people don't do that. Why? First of all, there is inertia that I've lived here for a very long time. My parents have lived here. My grandparents have lived here. So there is that kind of an inertia. Secondly, you will find that even the people who have the power to make new cities, that is the politicians, etc., for them it is not very rewarding to build a new city. You have ample cases of various individuals, various political leaders who have spent all their political capital and all their political might in establishing a new city, and they have been voted out of power. Because it takes a long period of time. Development of new city is not as if what you see in the movies, that the hero decides that today I will set up a new city and a new city is developed within 15 to 20 days. It takes a long period of time. Right? So here you need land acquisition, you need proper planning. So any new city to be developed takes close to around 15 to 20 years. And no one will be ready, or even you and I, we are not ready to wait for that long. Why to blame the politicians when we ourselves are not ready to wait for that long a period of time? So that is where the politicians, they are not ready to invest excess amount of time in order to have that development of new cities. Very few new cities have developed. For example, Chandigarh. Chandigarh is one of those. Then you have the steel city in Jharkhand, Bokaro. Then you have the region of Gandhinagar. Then you have Faridabad around Delhi. Then you have the region of New Raipur, the Naya Raipur region, which is being developed. But again, that has been abandoned because it was not very politically conducive to develop that region. Then Sikandrabad around the outskirts of Hyderabad, that has come into existence. Then basically around the Delhi NCR, you will find the growth of satellite towns and satellite cities which are taking place. So very few of them not keeping a pace with the economic growth, not keeping pace with the rising population. So you need a proper planning that what will be the requirement of the city 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now. So because the construction in itself will take 10 to 12 years, 12 to 15 years. So that is when you'll be able to cater to it. You need efficient and affordable transportation system so that people need not be forced to live in the same city. So that, take the case of Japan, over clustered. But in Japan, you will find that people are living very far off and very far away from the source of income. Why? Because you have such rapid transportation mechanisms, such rapid transportation systems where people are able to travel maybe 100 kilometers in a matter of 1 hour. So in that situation, why will people prefer to pay higher property prices, higher prices for products and goods in the city limits when they can go and live somewhere else? So that is where proper efficient transportation mechanism needs to be developed. And that is the relevance and importance of having a quick and efficient transportation. But whenever, this is not a new phenomena, whenever you have the development of a newer transportation system in any developing country, particularly a developing country like India, where the population is high, the demand of the population is also higher, you'll find it is met with a lot of protest. In fact, when Delhi Metro was being first constructed, when Delhi Metro was being first built up, at that point of time, I'm sure most of you would be very, very young at that point of time. So there were a barrage of criticism which was thrown towards the government because of the fact that it was said that, so many people are poor, and in a country where so many people are poor, whatever money you are spending on the Delhi Metro, you should spend it or you should give it to the people. But little do people realize that that is not a solution. If you give people the money that you could spend in that infrastructure building, that will not be the solution for the poverty in a sense. It is not as if the poverty will be ameliorated or removed at that point of time. Presently, and the only reason Delhi Metro could be constructed at that point of time because of a huge amount of political consensus between the central government at that point of time and the state government, both of them opposing parties, but they had a kind of a consensus that Delhi will be very overcrowded. And look at the metro system now. Metro system in Delhi presently is for more than 360 kilometers only in Delhi. And that allows people to live outside the city limits as well. They are not necessarily forced to live around the central portion of Delhi. They are able to live in the outer limits of Delhi, right? Because they are able to move at a cheaper rate. And also every day, when you have 15 to 18 lakh people moving across these metro systems, that also provides a significant amount of relief from the otherwise happening air pollution, otherwise clustering of roads, clustering of your public infrastructure. So that allows for redistribution as well. Then again, when the rapid rail transit system, the RRTS module, which is being set up, which is being established, even there, you have a lot of criticism by various different economists, from Jean Drèze to, in certain cases, also Mr. Amartya Sen. So all of these basically economists, they have a kind of a viewpoint, and which is absolutely fine to have that viewpoint, that this is something which will not benefit the poor directly. Fair enough. It will not benefit. So even when you construct expressways, it is not as if construction of expressways 20 years delayed. Yes, the construction of Jewar airport around Noida, or the construction of the Navi Mumbai airport. Now, both of them were supposed to decongest the existing airport. Now, when you decongest the existing systems, you increase the economic scope, but that is met with a lot of delays. Similarly, in the region of Mumbai, there was a lot of delay about the coastal highway, right? Mumbai suffered because of that. So whenever there is clustering, the urban environment, the ecology is damaged at a much greater rate. Okay? Now, yes, Abhishek, correct. Presently, the bullet train, that also faces the bullet train technology, which has helped Japan, which has helped China also to decongest its urban areas and take the benefits of urbanization into other areas. That also comes to a kind of a screeching halt. Now, when we talk about transportation system, so transportation system involves transportation arteries, for example, the railways, the railway lines, the highways, the expressways, the all these, right? So these are your transportation arteries, the airways route, the shipping lanes. These are your transportation arteries, the vehicles which will move over them, and the organization, for example, Indian Railways, for example, NHAI, for example, DGCA and Airports Authority of India. All these, they are included in the transportation system overall. So transportation system is not only about the roads, etc. Roads, the rail lines, etc. They only form the arteries. Okay. Now you have various different modes of transportation which are in existence: land, water, and air transport. So if we take a look at few of the important ones, basically here, if we take a look at the important ones, so we start with the case of land transport rather than land settlement. So in the case of land transport, you have the roads. Now here, roads basically, they are of various different categories. You have national highways. Now, national highways basically are what? They connect various different states. So important cities in various different states, they are connected by the national highways. Then you have the state highways. Now, what about state highways? So state highways connect important towns or important cities within the state. They are not moving from one state to another. Oftentimes, they have an artery or a connectorial route to the national highway in that region. Then you have district roads. District roads basically, they are initiating from the district headquarters and they connect the nearby blocks, talukas, etc. That is basically your district roads. From the district headquarters to the sub-regions in that district, that is connected. Then you have the presence of rural roads, the Gram Sadak Yojana. So that is between one rural area to another rural area, or one rural area to maybe the nearby town, right? So that is a rural road. Any settlement, rural settlement is connected by road. And then you have other roads. In the case of other roads, you have, for example, project roads. Project roads. What are these project roads? For example, when we talk about the case of, let's say, a thermal power plant has been set up, so that thermal power plant will require a certain kind of, let's say, when we have a thermal power plant, it is set outside the city limit. So from there to the main settlement, you need a connectivity. A hydel power project is being set up at a faraway place near a river, or a dam is constructed, so you need a connectivity by road. So all these kinds of road projects, these are project roads which connect a particular project to the settlement. Then you also have the case of border roads. Border roads in India, they are constructed by BRO, or Border Road Organization. That is the one which constructs them. Now, these won't come under the category of national state highways in many of the cases, and these are very strategic roads which are constructed. For example, one of the so-called reason for the aggravation of China, or China becoming very aggressive across the east region of eastern Ladakh, is said to be the construction, rapid construction of road infrastructure in those bordering areas, in those bordering regions. A very rapid construction of road has happened in that region across connecting the DBO, that is the Daulat Beg Oldie, the one of the northernmost airfields that you have in our country, very strategic, right? Very close to the Karakoram Pass, you have the DBO, and that is connecting the entire region from Chushul, Moldo, in all that area. It is connecting the region of Eastern Ladakh. So that road is very strategic. It allows for easier evacuation. Similarly, in the region of Arunachal Pradesh, I don't know if you have followed the news and current affairs or not, there has been a proposal which has been passed now by the cabinet of the construction of a frontier road, right, which will run almost parallelly to the border of Arunachal Pradesh. Now, this is a particular kind of a road construction which the armed forces were basically demanding for a very, very long period of time. But because of the huge amount of cost incurred, huge amount of money which would be spent in this, so that is why people were not very keen on that. And nobody wanted to poke China in there because they were very wary of the response that the China would mete out. But ever since China has started becoming aggressive, settling down various different areas, so India also has given the go ahead for the construction of that border road, right? Even though in the case of Arunachal, it is said that it will be a part of a national highway to bring about or send a better signaling to the region, or to the Chinese powers as well. So it will be made a part of a national highway network. But overall, you have these kinds of roads, these categories of roads as border roads. Then also you have, when you consider, you also have road projects such as international roads. that for one particular infringement, you are forced to pay close to around 3 lakh rupees. That kind of fine is imposed. So in that scenario, what people will do? They will follow the rules, right? But it is very difficult to implement in our country. So what will be the solution? You cannot penalize people so much. So what will be the solution? The solution will be to expand the highway network. But nonetheless, we need to take the issue of the deaths happening on the roads very, very seriously. Imagine about the one particular thing. During the time of COVID pandemic, we lost lakhs of population. And that was very sad. And that was basically one of the most disheartening things that modern India had to go through, right? Post independent India had to go through. But think about it, that in the past decade and a half only, not talking about other times, only in the past decade and a half, we have lost more people to road accidents than what we have lost due to COVID. And people that we are losing, they are mostly in the productive age of population, so to say, the younger population, right? So that is where it has got a direct economic impact observed in the case of the country's productivity itself. So it needs to be brought to a stop. Okay. Right. So that is basically about the national highways. Now, road facilities, they provide a kind of a benefit in the sense that they provide you with a kind of a flexibility of movement. They give you a door-to-door connectivity as well from one region to another. You will have the roads. You can move anytime that you want, right? So it provides the last mile connectivity. It is cheaper as well. Road transportation over a shorter distance, it turns out to be cheaper as well. So that is the benefit of the road transportation generally associated. Then we have the rail transport. Now in India, rail transport was introduced in 1853 between Bombay to Thane, covering a distance of 34 kilometers. And since that point of time, the railways has grown at an incredibly fast pace. And now we have a network of close to around 7,300 stations with a route length of close to around 68,000. Okay. Now, railway lines in India, they are broadly of different categories. That is broad gauge, meter gauge, and narrow gauge. What is it? So when we have the broad gauge in that case, the distance between the rails is higher. That is 1.67 meters is the distance between the rail lines. In the case of meter gauge, it is 1 meter, hence the name 1 meter or meter gauge. And earlier, you had the system of narrow gauge, where it was particularly thin or it was around 0.76 or zero point 0.6 meter. So why did we have the existence or the inculcation of broad gauge? That was largely in order to increase the carrying capacity of the railway network so that the railways could carry more people. So in order to increase the carrying capacity, you needed the broad gauge railway also to improve the speed and also how many people could be moved, what was the load which could be carried, efficiency overall was improved. But in India, we still have presence of meter gauge and narrow gauge in certain areas. So overall in the country, you will find that close to around 93% is broad gauge, followed by meter gauge, and you also have the presence of narrow gauge. Now, when you have the presence of multiple things and multiple different gauges, your efficiency will reduce. Efficiency in the sense that from one railway line, let's say those of you belonging from the region of Indore and Ujjain, you would observe, as is the case with many particular areas, I'm taking this example. Why I'm taking this example? Because this is not a touristy spot. It is not as if the narrow gauge or the meter gauge exists because of touristy reasons here. In the other areas of engine, different route map. So it reduces your efficiency, it reduces your transportation ability. So that is why in the early 90s, the government had launched Project Unigauge. The purpose was to convert all the various different railway lines into similar gauge networks so that there can be easy movement and there can be greater efficiency extracted out of it as well. And as you can think about the projects run by Sarkar-e-Hind, the government of India, you should be proud to know that this is a project which is still running. This is a project which has still not been completed. Now, the updated target has been set up to be achieved somewhere around 2025. But let's keep our fingers crossed. We never know. It can further be extended, just like the climate goals, it can further be extended. So this is very much essential to establish a kind of an efficiency in the rail network. Now, the railway network has got advantage in terms of a kind of a scheduling, right? You will not come across the scenario which you come across in the case of road transport, that today you have this particular festival, there is holiday. So the road transport buses won't be available, right? But in the case of railways, have you ever heard that today you have this festival, so Rajdhani Express or any particular goods train won't be moving? No, they will move. All weather, all different types of weather, they will move. If they don't move, we as responsible citizens, we ensure that we break down the railway coaches, we break down the engines as well, right? So if somehow some situation occurs when there is a breakdown of even electrical machinery in the case of railways, what do? We pick up the stones and we throw it up. Nowadays, we have grown a strange fascination of throwing stones on the normal fast-moving trains as well. So that is a kind of a strange fascination. That is a kind of a citizen-based duty that we are doing towards the railways. But the railways have always provided a kind of a reliable backbone for transportation. In fact, there was a kind of motto which was given by the railways as well, that we made, or we were the ones who made a Mahatma out of Mohandas. Basically, this was alluding to Mahatma Gandhi. That when Mahatma Gandhi first came to India, for the first 2 years, he traveled through rail and he traveled across the country in order to gauge the public pulse, in order to understand what the problems of people were. So that is what Indian Railways was alluding to. But obviously, as is the case nowadays, people will get offended left, right, and center for anything. So railways had to withdraw that. But it is a reality that railways provide you connectivity. Okay? Now, after that, basically, in Ujjain, Indore area, you have the broad gauge system, but around the region of Mo, right? If you have to go to the defense establishment around Mo, you have a meter gauge line, separate meter gauge line, which is moving away from there, and that connects those small hamleted areas. Okay? Is the voice okay now? Is the... Okay, thank you. So that is basically about the rail transport. It has got its own kind of benefit associated. Then we have the water transport. Water transport has got a larger capacity to carry goods. It is of two types. You have the inland transport and you have the overseas transport, oceanic transport as well. Inland transport carried out across the region of... Is the voice still not okay, guys? Or is the voice okay? Okay? Okay. Fair enough. So in the case of water transport, you will come across basically the aspect of inland waterways. Inland waterways, when you have in that situation, there is movement happening across the canals, across the river systems. Now, then you have oceanic waterways from the port cities, right? So here, inland transport or inland waterways, that is very important for any kind of country, any economy. Inland waterways is very, very important. Think about it. Think about the predicament and think about the irony of it. India as a country was always dependent on inland water transport significantly since the ancient times to the Middle Ages, right? But when we came into the modern times, we shut that down. Same, or take the case of other countries, take the case of United States, take the case of European region, take the case of China. Over a period of time, over the period of centuries, they have expanded the horizon of inland transport, but we have reduced it. So we have now established the Inland Waterway Network managed by Inland Waterway Authority of India, and around 14,500 kilometers of our rivers and canal systems, they are navigable. They can be used as inland transport. So here, again, as a part of mapping, you should be aware of the national waterway, the important national waterways. For example, National Waterway 1, it is from Allahabad all the way to Haldia across river Ganga. Then National Waterway 2, it is not from, Waterway 1 is not from Prayagraj to Haldia, it is all the way from Allahabad to Haldia. National Waterway 2, that connects the region of Sadia from Dhubri, right? It provides a connectivity. There a lot of construction is happening in this region, establishing the guidance path, etc. Then National Waterway 3, Kolam to Kottapuram. National Waterway 4, that is to be connected in between Godavari, Krishna and Kaveri canal system which is in existence. So these are the various national waterways. Just a moment, let me check the mic. Okay. A confirmation for the audio now. Is the audio okay now? Better? Thank you. So waterway system is very important. So here, National Waterway 4, Godavari, Krishna, and all the way, the aim is to connect till Kaveri. Now, obviously, this construction has been delayed because of the cost incurred that is very high. So this is a waterway which has been delayed, construction of it. But 1, 2, and 3, there the construction is moving at a rapid pace. Ideally, you should be aware of National Waterway 5, 6. So first 5 you should be aware of. From a mapping point of view, these kinds of questions are generally asked. So you should be aware of that. Now, why is it that in India, you have a problem of developing inland waterways? The problem is that majority of the rivers, they don't have the enough amount of draft depth as it is referred to. Because of excess amount of sedimentation, the rivers in many of the areas, they turn very shallow. And when they are very shallow, there is an issue where the ships can get beached, right? So that is why consistent dredging and consistent digging is the requirement. It is very much needed. Okay, so that is one of the requirements. Then secondly, it cannot be that the river simply along the river, if you don't have the required various different infrastructure which is developed for the multi-mode transport, etc., So if that is not if that is not present, you don't have the railway link all the way till the river channels. Why will people move goods through the waterways? Right? So that is why in India we have very little amount of goods which are moved through the inland waterways. And the scope is huge. In India, we have only around 0.5 to 1% of the logistics, even lesser than that, which are moved through the waterway system. In the comparative case, if you think about China, more than 7% of the goods are moved through waterways. In the case of United States, again, the number is 7.5%. In the case of European region, again, the number is close to 8%. So when these countries are moving almost 8% of the goods across these areas, what happens? The logistic cost decreases. That means the product or the product cost also decreases. That means your product becomes cheaper and more attractive. So that is why we need to do this. National Waterway 2 will lie across River Brahmaputra from Sadia all the way till Dhubri. Now, the oceanic routes moving across the various port cities. Now, which are the port cities? Here you have to understand the chronology of the port cities also. So basically, the northernmost port in India, the large northernmost port in India is which one? It is the Mundra, or the rather the Kandla port, which is referred to as the Deen Dayal port now. Okay, that is a large port. Then after that, in Mumbai, you have Nhava Sheva and you have the JNPT ports. Then you have in Panji and Marmagao, you have the other ports as well. Then Mangalore is a particular port which is designed, which is developed to handle the oil products. So that is in the case of Mangalore. Then in Kochi again, you have a port. Now here, Virenium is another area where the port is to be developed. Then you have Tuticorin, Chennai, Ennore, Vishakhapatnam is the deeper port which is found naturally in the eastern region. Otherwise, in the region of eastern coastline, you don't have a general deep water port. So Tuticorin and Vishakhapatnam, these are generally deeper across the eastern coastline, but not deep as compared to the international standards. Generally, the deep water or in the port areas, to be able to handle large ships, you need the water to be more than around at least 15 to 20 meters deep. Okay, but that is not available. Then you have Paradeep and Haldia port. So here a question can be asked that which is the northernmost port? Is it Haldia or the Kandla port? People get confused in that. It is always going to be Kandla port, which is northernmost. Okay. Advantages of water transport. Advantages are basically, first of all, the scope is very high. It is very cheap if you think about it. So if you have to transport 1 ton of freight over 1 kilometer, waterways will consume only rupees 1.19, whereas roadways will consume around 2 rupees, 2.2 rupees. Also, it is much greener. In the same 1 liter of fuel, you can move 105 tons over water because obviously the resistance, the friction is very less. Whereas in 1 liter of fuel, you can only move 24 tons on road. So that is basically where it is greener, it is cheaper, it is more affordable. It can provide a significant amount of economic development across these areas as well. So these are basically the advantages. Now, ports are also of various different types based on the specialized function. Certain ports, for example, Mangalore port, they are based to handle what? Especially the oil import and export, they are developed to handle that. So that is where they are referred to oil ports. They will have tankages around the port area, and also you will have an extending pipeline from the port going into the sea, so that the ships, the oil containers and oil carriers, they don't have to necessarily come exactly at the coastline. So that is where these are oil ports. Example, Mangalore port. Paradeep port is also an oil port. Then ports of call. So this is a port where ships oftentimes come to take a break. So ports where ships cargo vessels and ships come to restock, refuel, and take a break in that long journey. So that is a port of call. Example, Colombo Port. Example, the Changi Port in Singapore. These are your ports of call. Okay. Then you have the ferry port. In the case of ferry port, what do you have? What is a ferry? Ferry is a slow moving vessel in which you can go and drive your vehicle, and it moves over a very short distance. So this basically connects two very shorter areas. So you drive your vehicle, you get your vehicle on the vessel itself, you sit down, so it will have a passenger seating area, it will have a vehicle parking area, and then it will be moving at a very slow speed, take you to the nearby destination where you can offload it and move away. So this is basically providing a connectivity over small regions which are separated either by a large river. For example, across Brahmaputra also, you have the movement of ferry. At one point of time, River Ganga was known for the ferry movement. So in the case of English Channel, you have the connectivity which is present across the port of Calais in France and port of Dover in UK. So that is again a ferry port. And then you have the naval ports, purely for navy and naval purposes. Example, you can take the case of Karwar port. Even Cochin, Vishakhapatnam, they will fit the bill, but Karwar port, especially for the navy. It is here that you will find a lot of naval vessels, larger ones. They are situated here. Ferry port is basically the one provides connectivity over a short distance, provides connectivity across shorter distance, helps people and vehicles move from one area to another. Okay. Example, in the region of Andaman Nicobar, from one island to another, you have ferry ports. For example, across English Channel, you have Dover Port. These are your example. Okay. Now, after this, we come to the portion of mapping finally. So here in the case of maps, what should your approach be? Ideally, I would suggest to you that your approach for the map, see, you are free to explore maps in whichever way you want. But ideally, I'm sure you want to succeed in this examination. That is why you are reading maps. In the case of maps, please have your study oriented to the portion of current affairs. Current affairs and its relevance is very important in the case of maps, in the sense that rivers in news. Rivers in news. Right? Storage structures in news. Storage structures in use. Okay, then after that, major infrastructure. For example, you have major passes, major tunnels when they are in use. Okay, or even major infrastructure in use. Then after that, regions across the world. Major areas in news. So questions are asked from this only. There is no question which is asked outside this ambit. For example, when we talk about the question last year which was asked about the countries surrounding the region or which have a border with Afghanistan. Now, in that case, why do you think that question was asked? Was that question asked because UPSC expects you to learn all the various different countries and their borders? I'm sure many candidates would have resorted to that because UPSC has asked this, so I will ask or I will learn all of this. Let's see if UPSC asks it again or not. If the UPSC will repeat this question, I will be the only candidate who will get it correct. No. UPSC had asked that because of the troop pullout, the NATO troops which had pulled out from that region, and it had impacted the nearby areas. UPSC also asked about the disputed islands in South China Sea. So find a kind of a pattern. Sometimes it has happened. That is, in the past 10 years, once or twice it has happened that UPSC has asked the countries or the cities north to south and east to west. So in the past 10 years, you will find 2 questions for that. That means out of 100, you will find, or out of 1,000 such questions in the past 10 years, only 2 questions have been asked like this. Now, what do the candidates, they have the expectation, or what is it that they resort to? They will start learning all the various different cities, north to south, all the capital cities, east to west, right? You tell them that do the same thing for minerals, they won't do that because that is something which is difficult, slightly difficult, and UPSC has not been asking that. So please don't resort to a kind of a sweeping preparation strategy based on 1 or 2 factual questions which are asked. Keep a track on current affairs, be very methodical, and be very religious with current affairs. That will be more than sufficient here. Okay? Any question for mains for mapping point of view? No. How will a question in mains come from mapping? I mean, think about it. Let's say I give you that opportunity to frame the question for civil services. Frame a question from mapping point of view and tell it to me that how a question in mains examination can you frame for 10 to 15 marks, right, of mapping that you can frame and you can put forward. And at the same time, you have to ensure it is not a question for class 8th or 9th standard. Even in class 8th or 9th standard, you don't find questions such as draw the map of India, mark all the state capitals, etc. Even that basically is not asked, even in that lower levels. In mapping, in mains, you get questions only in the optional. And that is also a list of various different places are given and you are supposed to mark it out. There also UPSC assumes that I have given the candidates 10 places to mark out. Candidate will not be aware of 5 places at least, right? Only in the 5 places candidate will be aware, and there you have to write 5 to or 20 to 30 words for each of those places. So that is basically the aspect. Okay, Gulam, in mains ocean currents may need mapping. So in that aspect, if you are talking about, so ideally you should have the ability to represent a rough world map and represent the ocean current, represent the wind movement. That ability you should have. Even, for example, coral reef distribution or mangrove distribution, if the question is appearing for, you should be able to draw the rough map and you should be able to finalize that. Okay, right? So only for rough sketches. So for rough sketches, I don't think you need to learn where exactly Delhi is, where exactly Hyderabad is, where exactly Lucknow is, where exactly Bhopal is. You don't need to learn that. So in prelims, what kind of questions will be asked from here? The questions will be asked, for example, that as a question was asked last year, where or which are the countries which share the boundary with, let's say, the region of Afghanistan, because Afghanistan was in news. Earlier, there were a list of which of these countries they share a boundary with, Mediterranean Sea, right? Which of these countries are inland countries, they don't share a sea boundary. So these kind of questions are asked. For example, in the region of South China Sea, you have the Spratly Islands, right? They have been in conflict. So that can be asked. For example, Russia-Ukraine conflict is going on. So UPSC can ask you about the detailing of the Black Sea, right? Sea of Marmara, Sea of Azov. All those kind of questions can be asked. Okay, but it will not be to point out. It will be to select amongst the options given. So you have the ability to apply logic as well. So that is why when you read maps, when you take a look at maps, please don't, this is the fault that we commit even while studying newspapers, which makes it very unattractive to study. And that is the same fault that we commit while studying the atlas as well. That we look at an area and immediately the first thing that comes to mind is, let's learn from this question, from this portion. If UPSC asks a question, then what will happen? So in that way, you are unable to look at the larger picture. So that is basically something you should be very clear about. Look at it from an explorative point of view. Explore the areas, understand the physical aspects, the physical realities of different places, of different regions. That is much more important. That is much more relevant. How many questions will be asked from this portion? It depends. Sometimes not even a single question is asked. Sometimes one question can be asked. Sometimes two questions can be asked. Right? So it depends. It has got a variability associated with it. Okay? So here, first of all, the approach to look at the maps, approach to look at the atlas. First of all, you should take a look at the physical map. This is the physical map. Now, when you are taking a look at the physical map of the world, you should be aware about the various different physical features which are present in different parts of the world. For example, where are the Andes present? Where are the Rockies present? Where are the Victorian deserts present? Where is it that you have Altiplano? Where is it that you have selvas? So that particular aspect of physical map should be read. And then after that, you should look into the portion of political map of the country, of the world. And when you take a look at the political map, that gives you an idea about the important countries, their regional spread, the ones which share a boundary with the sea, which are the ones which are involved in a kind of a tussle. So that kind of an idea you will get from it. So after physical, then take a look at political map. Okay. So for example, let's take a look at the physical map. We start with the portion of North America. How to approach this? Many of you have mailed it to me that basically I open up a map and immediately I feel dizzy and I sleep, right? So how should you approach this? What should be the approach in this situation? First of all, there are certain things you should be aware of, that which are the major physical divisions, the physical features which are found in that area, the relief features in major, then the water bodies in the surrounding region, which are the water bodies in the surrounding area. So that is how you should approach it. First of all, prima facie, because I'm sure many of us, we are not aware about it. Many of us are not even aware about that in the case of India, let alone in the case of other continents. So there you should be aware about it. So when you open up a map, so take a look at the water bodies, first of all. So for example, this region of North America, it will have Gulf of Mexico, right? Now, near the Gulf of Mexico, here you have what is referred to as the Yucatan Peninsula. This is your Yucatan Peninsula. Okay. Yucatan Peninsula. Then after that, here, Gulf of Mexico is important for the movement of the ocean currents as well, for the occurrence of tropical cyclones, etc. Then after that, you look at the regions of the water bodies. For example, here you have the Labrador Sea, right? Then important straits, Davis Strait. Okay. Now, Baffin Island, and close to Baffin Island, you have the Baffin Bay. Okay. Then the strait which basically differentiates Greenland from Iceland, that is the Denmark Strait. Then you have the Beaufort Sea, marking the northern extent of Canada. Then you have the Bering Strait, which separates North America from Asia. That is Alaska from Russia. At one point of time now this region of Bering Strait is covered with continental shelf. And it is estimated that at one point of time, this would have been connected. When the sea levels would have been lower, this region would have been connected. When the sea levels rose up, water came in and you had a strait which was presented. Then you have the Gulf of Alaska. Okay, so like that, here you have Gulf of California. So like that, you have the entire coverage of the water bodies which needs to be done first. After you have done that, after you have managed to do that, then come to the major physical forms and the physical features. So here you will observe the Rocky Mountains. Now these Rocky Mountains, they have been created as a result of what? As a result of a convergence of ocean and continent, and that is where it will have a mixture of fold as well as the presence of volcanic mountains to be present, right? You have a lot of volcanic mountains in that region because an oceanic crust is involved in the convergence. Now here, after that, here you will find the coastal ranges, the cascading coastal ranges. Coast ranges. Now these are the youngest fold mountains across the world. These have an origin only around very recently, that is around 1 to 2 million years back. That is when the folding was initiated. So these are basically amongst the youngest fold mountains that you will come across. Okay, it is across these stretches of coastal mountains that you will also come across the Great Pacific Trail, where you have the temperate evergreen forest because of significant amount of rainfall brought by the westerlies. So that is why you have the temperate region because of lower temperature and moderate temperature. So temperate evergreen. It is in this region where you have the very old, the very famed redwood trees, right? The ones which are very old, very thick, many of them hundreds of years old, many of the trees having 200-year-old, 300-year-old life cycle, right? Then you come across the Brooks Range. This is also said to be a formation due to folding process. Now here you have Mount Denali, which is the highest peak across the region of Alaska, the Alaskan range. This is the highest peak of North America, Mount Denali. Okay, highest peak. Then amongst the old fold mountains, you will come across the Appalachian Mountains. Now, Appalachians and the regions to the north of it, these are very rich in your mineral deposits, significantly rich in terms of your mineral deposits. Various different types of minerals. For example, you'll find the presence of iron, in some parts coal, copper, right? These are to be found in these areas. So very rich in minerals. And here you have the Ozark Plateau, which is also the Piedmont Plateau zone of the Appalachian, and that is also to be found in this is also very rich in those minerals, the generally the metallic minerals in general. Okay, now here in the part of the northern portion of North America or the northern part of Canada, for example, if you consider the entire region here, this is very densely forested. Very little amount of human habitation exists because the conditions are cold. So you find taiga conditions, taiga climate conditions to exist. Okay. Alaska and US are same. No, they are not same. Alaska is part of United States and United States is a country which has Alaska. So both of them are not same, right? I hope you understand the difference. Okay. So the northern part of Canada, that is forested. Why is that forested? Because of the taiga conditions which persist. Now, here in the northern part of Canada, you will come across another unique feature, and that is the coastline that is highly indented. The coastline you will find has got various erosions. Now, why have those erosions happened, and when have these erosions happened? Now you are a student of geography, you have understood the portions of geography. You are not merely a student in class 10, where you simply learn this. Very good, Pranay. These are your glacial erosions which have happened. So during the last ice age, as you had the glaciers moving here, so that is where this is a result of glacial erosion. Even in the case of Northern Europe, across the Scandinavian countries, you'll find this as a feature of glacial erosion. Okay? Now, then you will come across a kind of a shield. That is the Canadian Shield. Now, it also has an old volcanic origin, and it has a kind of a flat, featureless kind of a surface. But during the last glacial age, there was significant amount of erosion, creating the major lakes in that region. And that is where you have the system of 5 lakes. So which are those famous 5 lakes forming the border between United States and Canada as well? The 5 lakes you have, very good, Lake Huron, Michigan, Erie, Ontario, and Superior. So this can be thought to be learned as homes. Okay, I will not give you acronym for everything because I'm not a believer of acronyms in general. But here you can form the acronym, that is Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. So these are your 5 lakes, glacial erosion. Now this region of Canadian Shield, again very rich in mineral deposits. This mineral deposit that you find in the entirety of this area, that mineral deposit has formed a kind of a backbone for the industrialization of North America from the 1800s. Okay, so here you will find metallic minerals in general. And here in this particular area, you'll find the fossil fuels, lot of fossil fuels to be found in this region. Okay, gas, natural gas, all of that will be found. Then you have the Great Plains. This particular region is referred to as the Great Plains. These Great Plains, they are referred to as the breadbasket, the corn fields, right? So here, what do you think will be the temperature? Temperature in general is lower, right? Temperature in general is slightly lower. So here, the organic materials will be significantly high in the soil. Soil will be very rich in organic content. So here, you will find that dark brownish soil cover, which will support a lot of crops. So this is also what is referred to as the corn belt of United States. So a lot of corn and maize is grown in that region. And it is in the vicinity of these areas where you find the temperate grasslands. Which are the temperate grasslands which are found? What is the name of the temperate grasslands? So the temperate grasslands that you find is prairies. Very good. That is the temperate grassland that you find in the region. So the mineral rich areas, till now what we have seen, Canadian Shield, north of it, northeast of it, Appalachians, Ozark Plateau, these are metallic mineral rich areas. Then the region to the south, that is across Colorado, across the region of Texas, in those areas and western part of United States, these are your fossil fuels, or in the sense hydrocarbon rich areas. So you will have shale gas, natural gas, petroleum, crude oil. That is also something which had formed a backbone for developmental activities which happened in the mid 1800s, which significantly propelled United States in the league of development. Then here, when you come slightly to the south, that is where you come across the Mexican plateau. Mexican Plateau is also divided into two portions. Here you have Sierra Madre Occidental and Sierra Madre Oriental. Right? Oriental means something to the east, Occidental means west. So this entire region of Mexican Plateau is rich in minerals such as cobalt, lead, again iron is also something found, copper. These are something which are very, very common here. Okay? So that is basically about the region of Northam. That is how you should approach it. I'll tell you the approach. I'm not the individual who will tell you that L, you say L, I say A, you say A, I say K, and then we pronounce lakes together. No. This is the approach that you should follow. And that is where, if you follow this approach slowly and steadily in a kind of an explorative manner, you will get better at it. Now you have two important river systems which provide inland navigation, right? And even though inland navigation in this area is largely also supported by the river Mississippi, also one of the large rivers, Missouri, Mississippi, they drain into Gulf of Mexico. So when we talk about large rivers, you have Missouri, Mississippi, Ohio, right? St. Lawrence, Rio Grande. Now, across these major rivers, lot of significant amount of inland navigation is carried out. Now, out of these, for example, St. Lawrence will also form a boundary region between Canada and United States. Rio Grande will form a boundary region in between Mexico and United States. So this forms a natural boundary as well. These form natural boundaries. Okay. So if you just know this much, guys, obviously, I'm sure when you are knowing this much or when you are taking a look at this, your eyes won't be so close that you won't be able to look at the countries involved. You will get to know the countries as well. That will be more than sufficient for the requirement of the examination. Not only the requirement of the examination, but the insight that you will develop in general will also be very significantly better and much higher as well. Okay? So this is something that you can follow. Then when we come to the region of South America with the same approach, so here in the region of South America, across the western parts, you have the presence of the fold and the as well as volcanic mountains across the entire reach of the Andes. Okay. Now in this area, right next to South America, right next to the western part of South America, you have a very deep Peru-Chile trench. Very deep. Because there is convergence of the oceanic boundary happening. So Peru-Chile trench as deep as around 8,000 meters from the sea level. Right? Now, you have various different volcanic peaks from Chimborazo to Cotopaxi to Aconcagua. Various different peaks are in existence. Out of this, Mount Aconcagua is the highest peak of South America. In North America, which was the highest peak? Let me see if you are awake. In North America, which was the highest peak that we talked about? Good. Thank you. It was Denali, right? Mount Denali. Here it is, Mount Aconcagua, right? All of these, observe, they are not even more than 7,000 meters. And that gives you an idea about the magnitude or the how humongous the Himalayas are, where in the case of Great Himalayas, you have multiple peaks more than 8,000 meters, right? Now here, you have the presence of temperate grasslands in the form of pampas. These are your temperate grasslands. You have the tropical grasslands as well, and you have the temperate grasslands as well. These are your temperate grasslands. Which are your tropical grasslands in this region? So you have tropical grasslands in the form of Llanos and Campos. Llanos where? In Venezuela. Campos in the region of Brazil. Those are your tropical. This is your temperate. Okay, you have Llanos and you have Campos. Okay, then you have the Patagonian Plateau. This is what is referred to as the Patagonian region. This is the region which has had its connectivity with Antarctica and with Africa going back in the history. Okay, now here you will find that river Amazon obviously is amongst the major rivers that drains in this particular area. Now, amongst the various different countries that you come across, okay, amongst the various different countries that you come across, you'll find that the western portion is very rich in minerals along with the Brazilian highlands. For example, Chile, one of the largest producers of copper across the world. Copper, zinc, cobalt, significantly to be found. It is here that you have across this region of Chile where you have the cold Atacama Desert. Very dry, not cold, but very dry Atacama Desert, which is situated here. This is where you have the Atacama Desert. Okay, then in the region of Chile, Bolivia, and Argentina, these three areas, they are very rich in lithium deposits. Very, very rich in lithium deposits. That is why this is also what is referred to as the lithium triangle. Lithium triangle. Okay. Now here you have very dense vegetation happening across the region of the entirety of the Amazon River, and these are referred to as the tropical rainforest region. These are referred to as selvas. Okay, these are referred to as selvas. These are dense forested areas. Then other than that, here you have a significant amount of plateau region, right? Patagonia Plateau here you observe. Then you have the Guyana Highlands, that is also a plateau region. Okay, here is where you have the Llanos. This is your Llanos. Now across this area in Venezuela, across this region in Venezuela, which is the particular resource which makes Venezuela very arrogant and also rich? Very good. There is only one mineral which can make a country arrogant, and that is oil. So this is very rich in oil deposit. This entire area is very rich in oil deposits. Okay. Now then, when you come across the Brazilian highlands, here you have the Campos. Observe here. Campos. Llanos and Campos, what are these? These are your tropical savanna or savanna ecosystems. And prairie, pampas rather, they are the temperate grasslands. Okay? Now, Brazilian highlands also, any highland that you come across, the older ones. Similarly, in the case of North America, we had the Ozark Plateau, the Colorado Plateau, and the Canadian Shield. Similarly, here you have the Altiplano, you have the Brazilian highlands. These will be rich in what? These will be rich in mineral deposits like tin, like copper. These are found in this Brazilian highland region. Okay, now in the region, so how will you cover this up? Let's say you want to get introduced to the various different countries as well. And that is something you should know. It is a high time in your life that you should be aware about the various countries. It should not be the scenario that if I ask you where Colombia is and many of you say it is present next to Vietnam, right? That kind of an embarrassing scenario in your life should not happen. Being an aspirant of civil services, this is something that should absolutely be rendered as a cardinal sin, as a crime. You cannot have that, right? So that is basically where you should look at the countries which are present in that region. So how do you take a look at that? So start with the coastal regions. Coastal regions, if you start with, you have Chile, then you have Peru, then you have Ecuador, then you have Colombia. Like that, you travel the coastal areas. You'll find in the case of South America, it is only consisting of around 13 countries in general. So this won't take much amount of a time. And then you have two countries which are inland, that is Bolivia and Paraguay. These are the ones which don't share any particular region or any particular coastline. Okay, so this is basically the aspect of how you cover South America. Okay, then Europe. Now, in the case of Europe, basically start again from where we left off in the case of North America, Denmark Strait, separating Greenland from the region of Iceland. Okay, and here basically observe the North Sea. North Sea is again rich in mineral deposits. Which mineral deposit? Which has brought about a prosperity in the countries of Norway, Denmark, even UK, Sweden, and which have made these countries again, when you have that kind of a mineral, you become arrogant. And that is hydrocarbons, crude oil, right? If you look at the history of these particular regions of Norway, Sweden, they also face the same issues that we were facing in terms of economic opportunities are not there, people are migrating, the standard of living is not good, but they found fossil fuel. That is when they climbed up the developmental ladder. And now they will basically preach the entire world about how public health should be. They will preach the entire world how the taxation system should be. They will preach the entire world how even if you don't work, you should be paid not only significant amount of income, but raises and pension as well. If you have oil, you can afford it all, right? So that has brought about a boom, and this is North Sea. Even the recent UK elections and the UK politics that you will follow, majority of the politics revolved around extraction of hydrocarbons from North Sea. Okay, this is where a lot of historically a lot of oil spill has also happened. Okay. Yes, in happiness index, you will be high. If I start giving all of you a lot of money because I have a lot of money, won't you all be happy? You will be happy, right? So here you have the Scandinavian ranges in this area. And that is why these regions are referred to as the Scandinavian countries. You have the Scandinavian ranges, that is why. Okay. Here you have the Kola Peninsula, where you have the deepest mine which has been dug up. Historically, this has served to be of significant importance for during the Cold War. And it is here that you have the port city of Murmansk. Port city of Murmansk. Murmansk is a port city which, despite the cold or despite the higher latitudes in this region, it doesn't get freeze up because of the availability of warm ocean currents in the form of North Atlantic drift. So that again here that allowed the erstwhile Soviet Union to build a very significant nuclear submarine base exploited all the iron ore and the coal which was available, and that has led to the industrialization and the economic growth of these areas. Now, from here on, you'll find that the land is at a low elevation, in certain areas even below sea level, and that forms the entire North European plains. Extends from the region of even Ukraine, some parts of Poland, all the way into even Russia. And this is referred to as the grain basket of Europe. This is your grain basket of Europe. Because very high quantums of wheat is grown in this area. Okay? Then you have other mountains as well. You have another fold mountains in the form of Alps. Alps, significantly, the other fold mountains which exist. Okay? So these are your Alps, Carpathian. And basically, here you have the Balkans, which are also present in this area, the Balkans. Here you have the Ural Mountains, which separates Europe from Asia, forms a separation line. And then the Caucasus Mountains, which again forms a separation line between Europe and Asia. This is where you have the Black Sea region, the Black Sea area. Okay? And this entire region is drained by large rivers. For example, if you think about it, then you have the river Volga amongst the major important rivers. If you think about important rivers, so river Volga drains into Caspian, okay, due to which you will observe a very strange phenomena in the region of Caspian Sea, where here in this northern portion of the Caspian Sea, in this area, the water is basically fresh, right? Because river Volga drains there. But in the southern portion, which is also sometimes referred to as the Gulf of Karabogaz, there the water starts turning very saline. So even in the Caspian, the salinity conditions, they change from north to south. Okay? So then you have Dnieper, Dniester, then you have Danube, then you have Don. All these will drain where? Into Black Sea. Don into Azov Sea, which then is connected into Black Sea. So this is basically the aspect of Europe in general. Okay? Develop this kind of an approach. Trust me, it will be much more rewarding. Rather than finding a list on the internet on certain YouTube channels, nowadays you have that kind of a trend where people will immediately before the prelims examination, this becomes very prominent. And remember this, your friends will be also circulating this. So basically that you have a lot of people having that list, north to south, east to west, up and down, side and bottom, all that list will be there in your mind only for one day. You will end up committing negative marks in that. But if you explore the map by yourself, if you are curious enough what lies in which region, it will be much more rewarding in the process. Okay? Then here, basically, you will find the region of Africa. In the region of Africa also, you will come across a scenario where you have fold mountains to the north in the form of Atlas Mountains. Then here you have few uplands in between. Then you have the entire Sahara Desert. Now, Sahara Desert has got a lot of yardangs. So this is a feature which has got a lot of reddish soil in certain areas as well, composed of pebbles, gravel material, etc. Then you have what is referred to as the Sahel region. Sahel is considered to be an intermediary or a transition zone between the desert and the Now, then after that, East China Sea, and this is the mineral-rich South China Sea. Again, significantly rich in fossil fuel. Okay? Then the political map, if you take a look at it, observe here, this is where you have the Isthmus of Suez. Isthmus of Suez, which basically ends up connecting Asia and Africa. It is here that we have constructed the Suez Canal in order to provide connectivity between Mediterranean and the Red Sea. Okay, so Suez Canal provides connectivity between Mediterranean and Red Sea. Here you have another strait, that is Bab al-Mandeb. Bab al-Mandeb is situated here, and that is where a very strategic country of Djibouti is situated, and this is where China has constructed its military base. Then you have the Gulf of Aden, right? And there you have the Persian Gulf. Persian Gulf is what accounts for majority of the oil movement in that region. It is connected with, Persian Gulf is connected with Gulf of Oman through the Strait of Hormuz. And across this Strait of Hormuz, major oil movements happen. This is where you have the very famous and very busy port, that is the Bandar Abbas port of Iran. That is very busy and very fair. One of the largest ports in the region is the Bandar Abbas port. It is here that India was constructing or is constructing another port. And what is that port? That is your Chabahar port. Chabahar port. Okay. Then here basically you have the desert, the bigger deserts in the region. Which are those deserts? Daste Lut, Daste Kavir, and also Rubal Khali. These are your major deserts in the region. The major rivers moving through this area, you have two major rivers, Euphrates and Tigris. It has formed the basis for the growth and the development of the Mesopotamian civilization that have developed here. Now look at the map of the various countries and observe which of them share a border or a boundary with the region of Mediterranean, for example. Now, because you have a significant amount of news story coming out of the region of Ukraine, UPSC will not ask you that Russia is in war with A, Ukraine, B, Yugoslavia, or B, Greece, C, Georgia, etc. No, such kind of questions are not asked. I think even in class 7th, 8th standard, such questions are not asked. UPSC will ask you questions associated with the region of Black Sea. Now, Black Sea, basically, here the Black Sea is what empties here. So here you have the Crimean Peninsula, right? Sevastopol, which is the headquarters of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, very powerful Black Sea Fleet of Russia. Here you have the Bosphorus Strait. Bosphorus Strait that you find here, that provides connectivity of Black Sea to the Sea of Marmara. Here you have Sea of Marmara. Okay, so Bosphorus Strait connects them. And then you have the Dardanelles Strait, which connects the Sea of Marmara with the Aegean Sea, which is considered to be a part of the old Tethys Sea itself. Okay, so that is how these two straits, they lie in the region of Turkey. That is why for the very famous grain movement from Ukraine to the region of the rest of the world, Turkey, along with Russia, so Russia, Ukraine, and Turkey, they were part of that grain movement. So you have Bosphorus Strait and Dardanelles Strait. Bosphorus connects Black Sea with Sea of Marmara. Dardanelles connects the Sea of Marmara with Aegean Sea. Okay, right? Then after that, if you take a look at it, then also you should understand the regions which surround Black Sea, the countries which surround Caspian. This should be taken a look into. For example, here, when I say the portion of current affairs should be looked at, so you have Armenia, you have Azerbaijan. In the past couple of years, these countries have gone to war almost twice or more than twice, right? Where Armenia is supported, even India has supplied or exported our Pinaka rocket system to Armenia to support that war. Azerbaijan is being supported significantly by Turkey here. So in that case, basically, you will find that they are quarreling over a disputed region. This is the area around the disputed region. And this disputed region is referred to as, very good, that is the Nagorno-Karabakh. That is the disputed area, Nagorno-Karabakh. Oil-rich area. All oil-rich regions are disputed. Then you have Lake Van, one of the most saline lake systems that you will come across, and also Lake Urmia, also very, very significantly saline. Okay. Then in the case of Australia, Australia is pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Here you have the Great Dividing Range, which forms the eastern border. Here you have the Great Barrier Reef, very rich in coral, and that is where you have the Coral Sea and the Coral Sea Island as well. Now, this is where you have the region of Tasmania, which is separated from the mainland by Bass Strait. Here you have the Tasman Sea, which separates Australia with New Zealand. Then basically Gulf of Carpentaria, Timor Sea, right? All these. And basically it is across the entirety of the western part of Australia that you have an ever expanding desert. And what is that desert? That is the Victorian Desert. This is where you have the Victorian Desert in this region, Great Victorian Desert. Now here you have a lake, that is Lake Erie. Now this Lake Erie either or otherwise is divided into north and south, but during Pratyaksh, in India, K2 is considered to be the highest peak. Mount Godwin Austen, that is considered to be the highest peak. Okay. Now, national boundaries in the sense, obviously, question will not be asked that Sikkim shares its boundary with Pakistan, Bangladesh, or China. Such question won't be asked. Which of the states shares its boundary with how many countries? For example, consider the state of West Bengal. West Bengal, Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, they share their boundaries with three different countries, right? West Bengal shares its boundary with Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan. Sikkim shares its boundary with Nepal, Bhutan, and China. Arunachal Pradesh shares its boundary with Myanmar, Bhutan, and China. Okay, so these are the states which share their boundary with three different countries. So that is again something you should be aware. Okay, Uttarakhand, Assam, these share their boundary with two different countries. Okay, then look at the region where Tropic of Cancer passes through. Tropic of Cancer, where it passes through. So if you consider this, now which are the states which are covered when we talk about Tropic of Cancer? Which are the states which are covered here? Gujarat, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Tripura, and Mizoram. Okay, these are your states through which Tropic of Cancer does pass through. Then take a look at the major cities which lie close to the Tropic of Cancer. For example, you will find that you have the city of Ranchi here. Then you have Aizawl, very close to it. So all these cities are very close to it. That should be looked into. Bhopal, Gandhinagar, these are the cities very close to Tropic of Cancer. Okay. Then after that, take a broader look, because why in India I'm telling you that first take a look at political map, unlike the case in the world, is because in India you should be aware about your own state region or your own state boundary region. Then take a look at the physical areas, and in the physical boundary, start with the physiographic divisions that we have done. Right? So, for example, when we talk about the region of the Trans Himalayas, so which are the ranges in the Trans Himalayas? You should be aware of that. So, in the region of Trans Himalayas, we have Ladakh, Karakoram, Kailash, and Zaskar. Okay, you should be aware of this. Okay, now the syntactial bend where it occurs, Namcha Barwa, to the north of Arunachal. Now, here also understand that when a question was asked last year, that where Namcha Barwa is, and people got confused that whether it is in Garhwal region or whether it is in Arunachal Pradesh region. I hope you have that clarity about the region. For example, in this area of Uttarakhand, you have the Garhwal and the Kumaon region, which is prevalent, right? The Kumaon region and the Garhwal area. Arunachal Pradesh is basically the region where the Himalayas, they undergo a syntactial bend. Okay, so in the northeastern region, you have the hills and the mountains which are named after the various tribes which live in this area. That is why you have Dafla, Miri, Abur, and Mishmi. UPSC had asked a question from this, that where are they present, right? Then you have the Patkai Bum, the Naga, the Lushai or the Mizo Hills in this region. You have the Mikir and the Barel ranges, all form a part of the eastern mountainous area. Garo, Khasi, and Jayantia, they are a part of the Peninsula Plateau. They are considered a part of the Karbi Anglong Shillong Plateau, which is again an extension of the Peninsula Plateau area. Okay, presently, The Chinese incursion which happened in December, that happened, or the face-off with Chinese that happened in this area. Okay, across the Tawang region. Then the central portion, the central highland area. So in this, the approach ideally should be to take a look at the regions one by one. Again, based upon, after reading the physiographical division, immediately after that, you should take a look at the major plateaus. So start from east to west or north to south, anything that is possible. So here, for example, you will have the Rajmahal Hills, which will mark the easternmost extent of the Chota Nagpur Plateau. It is beyond these Rajmahal Hills that River Ganga will take a sudden southward bend and will form a large delta, that is the Sundarbans. Then here you have the Garjat Hills, which form a boundary zone between Chota Nagpur and the Bastar region, right? Then here you have the densely forested region of Dandakaranya. But nonetheless, then Chota Nagpur, you have the Ramgarh Hills right next to it. Here you will have the Kaimur ranges in this area. You will have the Kaimur Hills. Okay. Then in the entire region, you will have the escarpment or the block mountain of Vindhyas as well as Satpuras. Okay. Finally, I have the question which I was waiting for. How to remember different wildlife sanctuaries, national parks, names and their location. My dear friend, do you have any clue how many wildlife sanctuaries and national parks are there? Any clue? A rough idea. Let's suppose. It is more than, yeah. Sakshi, do you have any idea? Any clue? How many of them are you wanting to learn? You should have the idea that how many of them you want to learn? No. So you have more than 100 national parks. Let me give you the mind-boggling figures. You have more than 100 national parks, right? More than 580 wildlife sanctuaries. So let's assume combined with both of them, this number comes to around 700. Then you have around 53 tiger reserves. You have 33 elephant reserves. Then you have around 12 the biodiversity reserves. Then after that, you have close to around, again, 20 or 25 marine protected areas, right? So how much does that number come out to be? This comes out to be more than roughly around 850, roughly. So if you have the mental capacity, my dear friend, to be able to learn all of this, I'm sure you will develop your own technique, because you will be an individual who is extraordinary, right? So you will be an individual who even Einstein will benefit and inspire from his grave. Ideally, if you are learning this much, that means you are not reading anything else. So in this case, the absolute wrong approach which will be followed is to learn national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, tiger reserves. That will be the biggest mistake that you will do. Just look at the portions which have been in news, which have been in current affairs. Recently, we had the Target Prelims 2023, which was conducted. And basically, we had the portion of environment and ecology, which was covered. So the portions which were in news for the past year, cover those. The species which are in news, cover those. Only the current affair ones, my dear friend. And please don't take it in a negative manner. I want to address a larger question here. Many of us, we have that kind of a doubt that because UPSC can ask me one question from National Park and Wildlife Sanctuary, I need to learn all the national parks and all the wildlife sanctuaries which are there. Please don't do that. Never do that. That means you will be leaving all the other areas which are there. And if you learn national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, why will you ignore the elephant reserves? Why will you ignore the other areas? So refrain from doing that. Only the portion of current affairs. Is that clear now? Anyone has any doubt in that? Feel free to ask. Okay, good. Because please understand, I hope none of us are here to become environmentalists. We are here to clear the exam, and please understand the return on investment. So for 850 plus names, how much time will it take? And do you have to study only the names? Then you will have the temptation to study about the species as well. The endangered status, critically endangered status, the IUCN, which is giving that sites, whether it is given a protection in Appendix 1, Appendix 2. Then other than that, you will also have the temptation whether in Wildlife Protection Act, it is protected in Schedule 1, Schedule 2. Then rightly pointed out, you have 75 Ramsar sites as well, which is going to increase by the time you are appearing for the examination. So roughly you will have a task of learning around 15 or around 1200, 1300 names. If you are doing that, means you are not studying anything else. Please don't follow that approach. If you want to follow that approach, you are free enough to do that. You have many different people giving tricks and tips on YouTube channels as well, that find this acronym, learn all the national parks within 2 hours, within 3 hours. Fair enough. You are free to follow that approach. But please understand, if you take a look at the previous year questions, at max you get one question or maybe two questions. Even those two questions can be addressed by current affairs. If you are very unlucky that you are unable to solve the questions from you are unable to solve the questions by logic or from the portion of current affairs, even then you will lose two questions, two factual questions, which majority of your competition will also not be able to achieve. So that is why please keep an eye out on current affairs newspapers, my dear friend, will be your biggest friend. Okay? Right? Is that clear now? Right. So that is basically, and I hope that you are not demotivated by this, that if still you want to have a satisfaction on learning it, ideally I would suggest to you the approach should be state-wise. Pick a particular state, look at the protected areas, look at the major species in that state, and move ahead. Ideally, that should be the approach if you want to learn it up. Then that is how. Take a look at the major plateau regions. Malwa Plateau again has got the black soil. Here you have the Bundelkhand region, one of the oldest plateau areas formed there. Then the Aravalis, again the older part of physiography. Satpura and Vindhyas, these are your block mountain system. In between you have the rift valleys where you have Narmada and Tapi which flow. Maikal and Baghelkhand region is here, which separates or forms a water divide between river Son and river Mahanadi. That is a divide provided by Baghelkhand. Then Mahadev, Gavilgarh, Ajanta, Satmala. Here, take a look at the physiographic and the state-wise location. Okay, Eastern Ghats, you have the Nalamala, Palakonda, Javadi, Shevroy, Nilgiri, and Anamalai, part of the Western Ghat system. This is where you have the Telangana plateau, again rich in iron. Iron deposits are found in this area. Okay, then for example, this is how you can take an overall look at the plateau area. So this is basically your Chota Nagpur plateau, Shillong Karbi Anglong plateau, the region of Baghelkhand. Then here you have the region of Bundelkhand. Here you have the central uplands, what is also referred to as the Madhya Bharat Pathar, the central upland system. This is where you have the Malwa Plateau. This is where you have the region of the western Rajasthan Plateau, the western Rajasthan uplands that are referred to. Then here, part of the Deccan Trap, then Karnataka Plateau, Telangana Plateau, and then the Bastar Plateau. The extension of it is slightly to the north as well. Okay? Then the passes. Mountain passes should always be taken a look in terms of the state where they are found. That is important for the mountain passes. Which are the state where you find them? So for example, Karakoram Pass. This is where you have the historic China-Pakistan highway, which was constructed in 1960. It is close to this Karakoram Pass, where you had the construction of the northernmost airfield activated by the Indian Air Force, that is the Daulat Beg Oldie. Then here, the Pir Panjal Pass, that used to provide the easiest connectivity in between Jammu and Srinagar, but that portion lies now in the portion of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, so not used anymore. Okay, this is not used anymore. Then Banihal Pass, here is where you have the Banihal Tunnel and the Jawahar Tunnel, which connects Jammu and Srinagar with an all-weather connectivity. Then you have the Zojila. Zojila Tunnel is being constructed at a record pace. It was in news recently as well. And this will provide connectivity from the region of Kargil all the way to the region of Leh Ladakh. Shipkila is the region where River Satluj enters into India. It is historically important because this has been a region which has provided a kind of a connectivity, people to people connect, cultural connect, trade route between Tibet and the region of Himachal. And then in the region of Uttarakhand, you have Nitila, Manala, and also Lipu Lake. Lipu Lake is at a tri-junction between Nepal, China, and India. That is where you have the Lipu Lake. Then Nathula, near Nathula in Sikkim, you had the significant avalanche which happened, which claimed many lives, right? You have then Dihang, Dehu, and Pangsau passes, which again provide people-to-people connectivity because these are present at lower elevation. In the southern part, you'll find the presence of Thalghat. Thalghat basically provides connectivity between Mumbai and Nashik. And this allows the movement of wind through the Western Ghats. And despite lying on the leeward side of Western Ghats, that is why Nashik still receives rainfall. Then you have the Bhor Ghat. It provides connectivity between Mumbai and Pune. And that is why, again, Pune has got a favorable weather condition, wind movement, because of this gap which exists. Then you have the Palghat and the Shenkota Gap. Shenkota Gap is the southernmost in terms of gaps which exist in the region of Western Ghat. And here, both of them, they allow for the movement of moisture-bearing winds, moisture-rich winds, into the region of western part of Tamil Nadu, causing and bringing rainfall. So the western part of Tamil Nadu, which receives rainfall during the advancing monsoon, receives rainfall because of winds moving through these stretches. Now, when you take a look at the region of the islands, so for example, here observe Barren Islands, active volcano, right? Observe then you have the Sentinel Island, which was again in prominence a couple of years back. I don't know how many of you remember that or how many of you were aware of that. This is where an American Christian missionary was basically, he lost his life because he wanted to have a conversion of the local population and he wanted to interact with the local population, the Sentinelese tribe. And the Sentinelese tribe, they are very protective of their own kind of environment and they don't allow outside intervention. That is why he was killed by the tribal population. Then you have the 10-degree channel. It separates the region of Andaman and Nicobar. And this is the southernmost point. That is the Indara point. The 10-degree channel, why it is referred to as 10-degree channel? Because of the 10-degree latitude which passes through this area. Duncan Passage, Greater Andaman from Little Andaman. The ports we have already seen. Now here the northernmost portion is the Deen Dayal Port Trust, the region at Kandla, then Mumbai, Java. So all the ports that we already saw, this is what. Now the Virinium port, which has been in much dispute, significant amount of protests have been held. This is where Virinium port is said to be established. And it is in this region where the water is naturally around 20 meters, 22 meters deeper. So it has got immense opportunities to serve as the port of call. It will be the port of call, one of the major ports of call in the region of the Indian Ocean. That is where it will benefit. Okay. And these are your water storage structures. So again, I would suggest to you, please don't learn them just because UPSC asked one question last time. But still, if you want to, I would suggest to you, go for a state-wise or a river-wise analysis. So look at these water storage structures. But ideally, I would suggest you to depend on the current affairs, both in this case and in the case of mineral distribution. I would suggest to you that the minerals should always be studied in the form of the physiography first. Understand the physiography, understand the formation, automatically minerals will come to you. Okay? Now, in case you want to look at the national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, all of them, in case that is, or the Ramsar sites, everything you want to look at it, so you can access the official elephant reserves, everything, right? envis.nic.in. Okay, so this website will give you an idea about the latest figures of national parks, the location of it, right? The area of it, wildlife sanctuaries. Okay, so all the jokes aside, if you are really interested to learn that, I cannot stop you in that. So wildlife sanctuary, tiger reserves, okay, then wetlands, or rather Ramsar sites, elephant reserves, biodiversity reserves, everything you'll find to be present in this region. But ideally, I would suggest for this also, look at the portion of current affairs. So that will be all from my side. I hope that this entire session of geography was something which was helpful to you. Try to revise it, my dear friends. If you have any kind of issue, first of all, understand that you will need to revise it. If you leave this portion for some duration, it will evaporate very quickly. Don't let that happen. All the hard work that you have put in, all the various different types of jokes that you have tolerated, and sometimes bordering on insults also that you have tolerated, make use of that, revise it, make your own notes, ensure that at least 2 revision cycles should be completed within a month. Take a look at the tablet as well, right? Yes, Pranay, I do one thing. Pranay and Himaya, both of you, please be kind enough and send a reminder for that. So revise that. The tablet videos, use the tablet videos, my dear friends. Tablet videos, in many of the cases, they use animation in order to help you understand as well. So use those tablet videos that you have. I hope the tablets are not simply kept to be mummified and fossilized. Use them for your revision. If you use that, that will be very, very sufficient. Okay? So that will be all. And that marks the end of the journey that we had. I hope it was fruitful. This is not a subject which is as enjoyable as many other areas, but the effort has been from the subject matter experts, from my side as well, to make it more tolerable for you. And thank you all for the very kind words. Any doubts that you have ever, feel free to reach out to us. Any issues that you feel in preparation, don't hesitate to reach out. And till we meet again, do take care of yourself. Goodbye. And remember to enjoy the journey, enjoy the process. Thank you, guys.